Hey, it's Leo. Imagine your phone ringing late at night and the name on the screen belongs to someone you buried years ago. You answer, and a familiar voice says a line only they would know. Then the call collapses into static. Was it grief playing tricks, or did something reach across the line? Stay with me, because what seems like a ghost story opens into a careful trail of logs, signals, and patterns most people never check. Investigators who track these incidents sort them into a few types. First are crisis calls, when a relative hears from someone at the exact window they later learn the person died. Second are voicemail traces, where a saved message is overwritten by a new one in the voice of the deceased, time-stamped after service was cancelled. Third are caller ID echoes, when a disconnected landline appears as the origin of a short call that ends before hello. Each version sounds dramatic. The question is whether any of them survive basic tests. Let's pull this out of the shadows and into evidence. When a family reports a call, the first layer is human memory. In grief, the brain protects us with meaning-making, and auditory hallucinations can occur without mental illness. That deserves respect. But here's the unexpected truth. Some cases come with artifacts. Screenshots of call logs, carrier statements confirming a connection, voicemail files with waveforms that do not match earlier recordings of the same person, yet carry unique speech habits the family can identify instantly. If you think this is only folklore, you probably haven't heard this before. Now, the technical side. Telecommunications do weird things. On copper lines, stray voltage can produce brief phantom rings. On mobile networks, caller ID spoofing is common, and recycled numbers can confuse databases. Voicemail servers can glitch, restoring old clips with fresh timestamps after maintenance. Even crosstalk can stitch a fragment of an unrelated conversation into a recording. Skeptics point to these, and they should, but here's why this matters. Many of the strongest reports come from people who investigated those explanations first and still found mismatches, like a carrier confirming no inbound traffic at the time the handset shows a completed call of several seconds. There is also a field you rarely hear discussed outside research circles: instrumental communication experiments. In these setups, people attempt to capture voices through radios, recorders, or phone systems under controlled conditions. Results are mixed and often controversial, yet a handful of studies suggest that under stress, electronics can produce structured signals not explained by random noise. That does not prove anything supernatural. It does tell us that complex networks can yield anomalies that feel personal when they land in the lap of a grieving family. So how do you separate a genuine anomaly from a network quirk? Start with provenance. Photograph the phone screen while the call is active, then again in the call history. Preserve the voicemail file and export the original with metadata intact. Ask the carrier for a simple inbound record, not a full subpoena-level dump. Compare the waveforms of the alleged voice to earlier recordings for cadence, pause length, and word choice. If the message includes a private phrase the person used often, that is emotionally powerful. But the timing and logs carry more weight than the content. There is a psychological angle most people miss. In families that receive these calls, the message is usually short and practical. I am safe. Check the drawer. Tell them I love them. These are not grand prophecies. They read like unfinished business, compressed into seconds. Whether that comes from a mind under strain or from something we do not yet measure, the pattern is striking. And if you are tempted to dismiss it, consider this oddity reported by some technicians. A second phone in the room sometimes lights up with an incoming call at the exact moment the first one plays the message, but never records the audio. Two devices, one moment, one voice on only one device. Now let's test a harder case. A family's landline is disconnected after an estate is settled. Weeks later, the daughter receives a missed call from that number. The carrier confirms the account is closed, yet the switch shows a handshake with a timestamp. A technician blames a database cache. Reasonable. But the next day, a voicemail arrives at dawn from the same number. The voice asks the daughter to look under a floorboard. There she finds a sealed envelope with a note written years earlier. Coincidence is always on the table. Still, when coincidence keeps showing up in similar clothing, you measure its sleeves. If you ever receive a call like this, take a breath and go slow. Write down the exact words, the time, and what you were doing. Preserve the recording before you replay it. Note smells, temperature changes, or other sensations only as context. Then ask a simple question that only the caller would answer with a specific phrase. If a second message arrives with that phrase, you have a stronger case than a single shocking moment. Stay with me, because what comes next will surprise you. In the next part, we follow a documented chain of calls tied to a dismantled payphone, and we run the timeline against switch logs, power records, and the one piece of evidence that never showed up on the bill. The file on the payphone case begins with a city work order. A street corner kiosk was dismantled and hauled away. 2 weeks later, a teenager saved a voicemail from that very number. The message lasted 9 seconds. A whisper said her name, coughed once, and asked her to bring a specific family photo to the park bench across from the old phone box. That sounds theatrical until you add the paperwork. The carrier switch log showed a handshake at the exact minute the voicemail arrived, even though the line was flagged inactive. The power utility confirmed the cabinet had no current. A maintenance camera nearby recorded no one at the pedestal. So, what produced a valid connection from a dead endpoint? Audio analysis added a detail no one expected. The voicemail carried the metallic room tone you get inside a narrow enclosure, plus a faint bell at a precise interval. A transit schedule placed a rail crossing alarm half a block away that rings at that rhythm only when freight moves at night. The call was not conjured in a studio, it wore the acoustic fingerprints of the corner where the kiosk had stood. Coincidence is possible. Yet when the family brought the requested photo, they found an envelope under the bench with a note written by the teen's grandfather years earlier. It was mundane and tender. Do not sell the tools, make something with them. That is not proof of the afterlife. It is a hard-to-stage convergence of logs, place, and motive. A second pattern emerges in clinical settings. A nurse kept a sealed hospice phone awaiting collection. It was powered down, tagged, and locked. The next morning, the bereaved daughter received a missed call from that number followed by a voicemail. The voice thanked her for keeping a promise and told her to check the middle drawer of a desk. Inside, she found a notarized letter that simplified the estate. The hospice inventory sheet and camera footage show the phone remained in the locker the entire night. A technician suggested a remote spoof. Reasonable. Except the voicemail metadata listed the original device model as the sender, and the carrier confirmed no outbound activity from that SIM during the window. You do not have to accept a paranormal answer to see that our records do not always map cleanly onto lived time. A maritime case pushes the puzzle into radio territory. A crew received a satellite phone message weeks after a deckhand was lost at sea. The voice apologized for causing worry and said to tell his brother the boat key was taped under a shelf. The SAT account was dormant and prepaid minutes were exhausted long before the message arrived. Weather data for that corridor showed a strong temperature inversion capable of bending signals. Engineers cite ducting for long-range radio anomalies. Perhaps a rare bounce resurrected an old recording and delivered it late. If so, why did the file include fresh cabin sounds specific to the night shift? And why did the waveform show recent compression typical of newer network nodes rather than the older codec used when the minutes were purchased? Time slip claims are the most dramatic and the easiest to mishandle. A woman reported a call from her grandmother that included a harmless warning about a pot left on the stove. The caller ID showed an antique rotary number that had never been assigned to a mobile subscriber. The audio began with an operator-style tone long retired from the system. Archivists have copies of that tone profile. It matched. Could a low-probability chain of spoofing and audio filters replicate it? Yes. But when the listener walked into the kitchen, the pot was indeed on a blazing burner. Her explanation was simple. She had been distracted by grief. The call did not save her house. It saved a dinner and a story. Not every anomaly needs a cosmic meaning to carry weight. If you ever face one of these moments, you can document it without turning your life into an investigation. Photograph the screen while the call is live. Capture the call log after it ends. Export the file once and store the original. Ask your carrier for a plain language confirmation of whether a connection touched their switch at the time you recorded. Then step back and ask a quieter question. What unfinished sentence did this moment complete for you? The value may be practical or emotional, and either one is real. So where does that leave us? Network artifacts can create apparitions at scale. Grief can tune the ear toward what the heart hopes to hear. Yet some cases survive those filters with a residue of the unaccounted. A handshake from a deadline, a room tone from a box that no longer exists, a message that names a place only a handful of people knew. You probably have not heard this part emphasized because it lives in the gap between lab certainty and human testimony. That gap is where stories like these find air. Here is why this matters. We live tethered to invisible systems. When those systems hiccup in intimate ways, they feel like visitations. Whether they are or not, they remind us that connection travels on threads we cannot see. Treat the evidence with care. Treat the moment with care too. And if your phone rings from a name you miss, answer gently, record carefully, and decide later what it meant. There is more to say about signals, memory, and the places they meet. For now, the line is open, and the question echoes back to you.